the new Shaky snake. What we're doing is we're basically just taking a screw lock weight system and we're actually putting this in the head of the bait. And the reason why I'm going to screw it into the head is what I'm trying to accomplish is I want this head to actually drag on the bottom on this Neko rig and have this tail up. So the whole concept is not to let this bait basically leave the bottom. You can lift it up a little bit, but you'll notice the one half is going to be obviously heavier than the other, and this is constantly going to be moving, and that's what's going to trigger the bite. So I'm actually going to tie it with a fiber weed guard, and that'll allow us to drag it through a lot of weed growth. Now we're just going to take our hook, we're actually going to slide it right into that center core section, feed it through, then just take this fiber weed guard. You know, the neat thing about this rig is it gives you basically the Wacky style with the Shaky head design. There's a good one. You know, finesse fishing is probably the most fun way to fish, but it's also probably one of the most productive ways. I'm light line, I'm 8-pound braid down to an 8-pound fluorocarbon leader on a 6/6 spinning rod. And I'm a little bit different than most anglers. I like a longer rod. Because I'm fishing lighter line, what I really want to do is to be able to control that fish with just the rod. So you'll notice my rod's a little bit softer, but I'm using light line, so my rod is actually doing all the work. There we go. Good way to start the morning. Neko rig, weeds, and nice northern largemouth. You know, one of the things that we face up in the north is in these natural impoundments is two things. Number one, a lot of weed growth. The other thing is we're constantly fishing and looking for those deep weed edges or deep weed lines. And one of the things that you'll find is that we have to figure out or target and look for specific spots. A lot of times it's not a big flat or a ledge or something like that. It's more locations where you got a hard bottom within a weed bed, or you've got a transition off a point where you get that deep weed line coming off a rocky structure or a harder bottom. You know, a lot of times I can look at my lake map, relate to the contour lines and how that weed line is gonna run. If I see an inside turn or I see a point protruding out, I know that that weed line is gonna come out to that point. And a lot of times what I'll find is harder structure there on those points, and that's where those fish are gonna sit. A weed line with a little bit of harder bottom is a great ambush point. A lot of times it'll open up, it'll be a little less dense, and it'll give those fish a great ambush point. Locations like that is definitely the key to northern bass fishing. You know, the Neko rig is a really unique presentation where a lot of times if you're trying to fish Wacky style, it's a real slow, methodical presentation. Well, the Neko rig gives me the ability to let that bait get to the bottom fast, be able to cover a lot of spots and be able to get back to the fish. A lot of times you get that school fired up, whether it's a weed line school or a rock pile school, you get them fired up and you want to constantly be after them. And with the Wacky style, you don't get that presentation. It takes a lot of time for that bait to fall. You can use the belly weights and things like that, but it's still not the presentation. Well, with the Neko rig, I've got the Shaky head style where I can get that bait down fast. I can adjust my weights depending on how deep I am, but I still get that Wacky style or that Wacky presentation. Little. You know, with the Neko rig, it's a pretty unique rig, and you'll catch a lot of different fish, and it's a pretty unique style bait where we can catch multiple species. Whenever I'm finesse fishing, it's basically a numbers game. You're gonna catch giant fish, but it's also, you're gonna catch lots of different styles of fish. You know, here we are out bass fishing today, and look, I can't get away from the walleyes. A walleye guy can never get away from what his true passion is. The whole key to this bait, and what I can't stress enough, is obviously we could hook this bait this way, or we can hook it this way. The reason why I wanna hook it from, I guess, the nose of the bait towards the tail is I want that bait to drag properly. If I hook it the opposite way, what's gonna happen is my line's gonna actually interfere with my tail. Once again, we're just gonna take that hook, and you wanna give yourself enough room that we can actually lay the shank of the hook in the bait itself so that lays nice and flat. If you notice, basically we've got the shank of the hook right to the round bend. take my fiber weed guard, go right over the bait, and there's a beautiful presentation. You know, today we're fishing weed line structure, but there's a lot of times in the north where we're concentrating on smallmouth or looking for fish on a rock type structure, whether it be on big boulders or on gravel. But one of the things we face up here is zebra mussels are aquatic, you know, invasive species. And one of the things you run into is that your line will actually get frayed from the zebra mussels. And a lot of times what we find is any way that we can present a presentation where our knot stays off the bottom, we're a lot less apt to lose fish due to frayed line or whatever it may be. Well, the Neko rig is pretty interesting that when fish are feeding down, and a lot of times we'll get fish that literally all they'll eat is feeding down. Well, you got to keep that rig close to the bottom. Well, the nice thing about this presentation, if you notice where that hook sits, you know, it's up off the bottom. It's not going to drag in the zebra mussels, not going to get those frays or whatever it may be. So, and you'll notice when I'm working this bait, I'm not lifting this bait way off the bottom and letting it come down. I'm basically just dragging it real slow off the bottom. If I get to an area, if I find a bed, whatever it may be, I can leave this bait sit there right in that location and just give it a shake every now and then. A lot of times when I'm casting here along a weed line, what I'll do is cast it into the weeds and just slowly pull it out. And the minute it gets to the edge of the weeds, I'll just let it get to the bottom and I'll just sit there and slowly shake it. And that's what those fish are doing. They're sitting inside the weeds, they're looking to ambush, and instantly, the minute I pull that out of the weeds and let it sit right along that weed line, that's when those fish are going to target it. You know, finesse fishing can be a lot of fun, and at the end of the day, it's about producing numbers. And when it really comes down to it, when you produce numbers, you get size. Beautiful northern largemouth, Neko rig. What a great presentation to produce a lot of fish. Next time you're on the water, give the Neko rig a try.